Falcons kick the ball into the end zone and concede the 35 with 20-plus seconds left, we know there's going to be an opportunity to complete a pass and put the ball in field goal range. We had the Puka Nacua catch on the sideline that we thought was a catch that wasn't. Was that drive? It's all melting together for me. I think that was the play, right? Nacua makes the one-handed catch. It looks like a catch. The ball was out. And it would have put them on the fringe of field goal range. And then on the very next play, and look, that was an impressive effort by Puka Nacua. And at first it looked like he one-handed it and got 2 feet down, but the ball clearly came out. That was a good job by the officials. The next play, and I know I'm talking to a long-time defensive back here who's going to have strong opinions about defensive pass interference. But the long throw from Matthew Stafford, I think even Devin McCourty would acknowledge that when D. Alford is chasing down Tutu Atwell, if you hook the guy's arm as he's trying to pull it up to get 2 hands on the football, that's pass interference. Joe Buck said it. Troy Aikman said it. Even Russell Yerk, the rules analyst, who, in my estimation, at times seems to be a little too protective of Big Shield. Even he said that should have been pass interference. Devin, what? And this is the I'm going to give you I'm giving you final say over all of them. I trust your opinion more than any of them, especially if you agree with me. Do you think that was defensive pass interference?
I do not. If you go back, Troy Aikman didn't necessarily agree. He said, Troy Aikman said that would have been really tough to see in real time. Everything's pass interference in slow motion. Everything's holding on the offensive line in slow motion. They hold every play. We get pass interference every play. If you go back and you watch that play in full speed, that first clip we showed, Tutu Atwell sticks his arm back and he creates the first contact. D. Alford does a great job when he creates that contact. You hook the arm for a second and then you let it go and you reach with the same arm you hook with. And he hooked with the right, then he grabbed a little with the left, and then he reached with the right hand right here. And now the official, he saw hand fighting, and then he saw you reach. Yes, is it pass interference in slow motion? 100% of the time. In full speed, when that guy goes back and he sticks his arm out to create that separation, if you grab it for a second, take a step with it, and then you can make it look like you're running and mixing up with him and then reach your hand, it rarely gets called. It happens all the time. So to me, it was a good defensive back play. Is it pass interference in slow motion? I agree. 100% of the time. It was the worst rule when they try to implement reviewing pass interference because everyone found out there's pass interference on every play. Yes, we grab a half second before the ball comes. That's what a good defender does. Good job, D. Alford. Incomplete pass. I thought it was a really good play by Alford.
Well, and it was the second time in 2 weeks that we had a late drive in a primetime game that was marred by uncalled defensive pass interference. And I know you're going to agree with me on this one because the call hurt the Patriots. But I'd like to think that even a career defensive back will acknowledge that Marlon Humphrey pulling Keyshawn Boutte to the ground before the ball got there. Yeah, but here's my broader point. And Devin, look, I've always been a believer, and this goes back to the Randy Moss days when he was running by guys and scoring 50-yard, 60-yard touchdowns on a regular basis. There was a push to make defensive pass interference not a spot foul. And it bubbles up from time to time. And it may be that they need to do it to make it a 15-yard penalty and an automatic first down. There's too much that rides on the decision that is made in the split second in real time. And I'm not making the suggestion from the standpoint of what's fair, what's not fair as it relates to the outcome of the foul, because I'm not a big fan of incentivizing tackling the receiver when you've been beaten on a long throw and making the calculation, I'll gladly give up 15 yards instead of being beaten for a touchdown. I think that's a lot to process and act on in real time. We don't see it happen on a regular basis in college football, and it's the rule there. My point is this. You put too much discretion you put too much influence, you put too much of a potential outcome-determining decision in the hands of an official. That was a 45-yard penalty last night. And frankly, the only way the Rams force overtime is if that penalty is called. If Tutu Atwell catches that ball, good luck watching the Rams offensive lineman chug-a-lug 45 yards down the field in 10 seconds and get in position for Matthew Stafford to clock it. Hell, good luck seeing Matthew Stafford John Wayne his way down the field to get in position in 10 seconds to clock it. It wasn't happening. If Tutu Atwell, that's the one thing I wish they would have said last night. If Tutu Atwell catches that pass, game's over. Game's over. The only way the Rams get saved is if pass interference is called, clock stops, they get a shot at the end zone if they want to take it, and, barring a sack or some other disaster, they kick a field goal that forces overtime. So it is such a long play when that penalty's called. The consequences, and this gets back to the whole normal incidents of the game in an age of legalized gambling, will cause people to think that somebody's putting a finger on the scale somewhere. My point is this. When you make pass interference on the defense, a spot foul, it puts way too much power in the hands of the one person. And I know that others can throw a flag too, but it's usually one person back there watching the receiver and the defensive back. For that reason alone, I think they need to think about making it a 15-yard penalty. There's too much that rides on whether or not the official in that moment is going to see it and is going to be willing to call it.
Yeah, and I think about how many games we watch where, again, even that play, when it's full speed, how many guys you're going to get half the people who say, hey, that's just hand fighting, other half of people who are going to be like, that's pass interference. The Marlon Humphrey and Kayshon Boutte play, right away everybody's like, he just tackled him. Like, that's pass interference. But I hate sometimes, like, when we see these games and the ball's thrown up for a hope and a prayer, and you see these pass interference, like, if we're honest, almost every Hail Mary, there's pass interference because the ball's in the air and people are jockeying for position, and, like, we're being taught to box out. You can't box out in football. That's pass interference. So think about how many games would change if they called that exactly to the T with guys boxing out and all that. Like, you wouldn't be able to do that. So I do think there's a place for it. I do get nervous from a coaching and strategic standpoint of how much guys would be taught to just get pass interference if you feel like you're in bad position. Now, I do think the ego and pride of defensive backs won't allow you to do it that much. Like you said, you bring up college. But, like, even in the NFL, there's times that if you get what we call a double move, a guy runs, he stops and he pauses for a second, you get the pump fake, and then he keeps going. Even in those situations, you're taught as a defensive back, hey, if they get you and you look and that guy's about to take off, just dive out and tackle him. But that is also with the thought of it's a spot foul, because if you tackle him where he pump fakes and he turns up, maybe it's 10 yards compared to giving up a touchdown, or you tackle him late down the field. So I understand it, that you don't want to make that an issue where teams, like, I think of, like, again, playing in New England and all of the loopholes and strategic advantages we looked for. Like, that would be a part of it, I think, in some weird sense. But I do hate, I think, because a part of the plan as offense is you throw it up there 50, 60 yards down the field and you think, hey, it's either going to be an incomplete pass or the ref's going to have a view that he calls pass interference. Like, the only reason that wasn't called pass interference in the game is because the official in the middle of the field was blocked because D. Alford was trailing a little bit. So I don't think he had a clean angle. And the referee on the sideline, I think he just saw the end of it where Alford reaches. I think it would have took the ref all the way on the sideline behind to be able to see 45, 50 yards down the field to see exactly when the grab happened. And I think that's the only reason. If that play was on the sideline, the middle official would have called pass interference. Like, I just think he would have been able to have a clear view and would have called pass interference. And I think that would have sucked to see that game decided by a little hand fighting at the end of the game on a hope and a prayer because of possible pass interference. And like you just said, if it was a catch, it would have been very hard if they don't get out of bounds to get down there. You would have had to have a whole other unit ready to run on the field and having like wide receivers report eligible to try to snap the ball and get the rest of the guys up there to kick a field goal.
Well, we saw a game on Saturday that it wasn't as clear, but the game was arguably decided by a ticky-tack illegal contact foul, and they put Walt Anderson on NFL Network Sunday morning to explain by the letter of the rule it's illegal contact. The question he wasn't asked, and they had the discussion later after he was off. It would be nice to see someone from the league office pressed on this. I understand that there was contact. I understand he cut off his route. I understand that if we look at the rule book, but they only call that foul sporadically. It's not called all the time. Why was it called there? Now, you said something earlier that fired a neuron in my brain. There is a difference between blatant pass interference, where everybody knows it's pass interference, and it's like, what the hell's going on? And one of those where you have to frame by frame slow motion it, like the D. Alford T2 Atwell exchange. No one is going to be sympathetic to the Rams for getting screwed by uncalled defensive pass interference because they got a Super Bowl berth out of uncalled defensive pass interference against your Patriots in Super Bowl 53, right? The worst and most blatant non-call of defensive pass interference you could ever see. It happens in an NFC championship. It sparks the outcry that culminates. And I remember we interviewed Rich McKay from the competition committee, Rich McKay, that we previously showcased, sitting dead-ass center between the owner and the GM last night, who's not involved in the football operation in Atlanta, but he is involved in the competition committee. And we were pressing him, what are you guys going to do about this? How is this not subject to replay? And you mentioned it, Devin. They set up replay for pass interference calls and non-calls, defensive and offensive. And I remember when Al Riveron, who was in charge of the process at the time, they make the rounds with all the networks and they have a seminar before the start of the season. And it's supposed to be off the record. But because somebody from NFL Network talked about it, it's fair game. Because that year, when Riveron's doing the dog and pony show with here's what it means now that pass interference is subject to replay review, he showed some play from a Chargers-Chiefs Thursday night game the year before, and Mike Williams caught a touchdown pass, and it was like this big reveal. And that would have been offensive pass interference. And everybody's like, what the what are you talking about? But that's what they did. It didn't just address the blatant pass interference fouls that were missed. They applied it, fine-tooth comb, slow motion, frame by frame, and they messed it all up. Almost said the other word. If I'm going to make a New Year's resolution, I'm not, to not swear on the show. It's my last day to really let them fly, but I won't today. But Devin, I almost feel like they did it on purpose. Like, fine, you want replay review for pass interference? All right, you got it. Here it is. Enjoy. And that's the problem, because that was such a debacle. What can you do to fix it now? What can you do? They have no mechanism. This gets back. I'm doing the weave. This gets back to the point. They have no mechanism to dilute the influence that one person has over a 50-yard chunk of field position. And in an age of legalized gambling, do we really want one person to be able to deliver half of the field by either throwing the flag or keeping the flag in the pocket? It is a major problem for the NFL. Officiate. There are people around the league officiating is at a crisis. And sometimes it's like hyperbole. It's like, come on, all right, give it a rest. It can't constantly be at a crisis. And if it is, it really isn't a crisis because it hasn't done anything to the league. At some point, it will, and it's going to come from something like that, because there's too much riding on that one call or non-call. There's too much field position, too much of a potential to determine the outcome of a game. And I think of anything that the NFL needs to fix, and there are many officiating issues. Job number one, we got to have a safety net for these DPI calls and non-calls. And look, that's for them to figure out. They're the ones making the money. They're the ones who are the stewards of the game. But they need a solution. And it can't be what they did in 2019. But they need to have one that would fix. I'd be fine with this. It fixes Booty. It fixes that play. I'm fine if the bar is high enough that it didn't fix what happened last night, even though it should have been called in real time. But they need something to protect the game from the kind of total failure we saw in the Patriots-Ravens game.
That's hard for me. I don't think I agree with that, because I think pass interference is highlighted, and I get it because of the yards, but it's also highlighted because of the space. It's one of the few calls where the ball's thrown and like there's only two guys. But like that to me is no different sometimes when we see these blatant holding penalties that even set up the pass interference. So now we're going to try to highlight the pass interference, and you're going to try to get the obvious ones, but I think you're going to always run into a problem, because as much as there's a DPI on every pass play, there's also OPI, and you just brought it up when you look at these plays, because now sometimes you're going to look back at these plays and you're going to see this push-off, or you're going to see this extension of the arm, and by the letter of the law, you're not allowed to, but we know when you watch the game, if you don't fully extend your arm and hit somebody with a full arm, stiff arm, you're usually not going to get called for OPI. So, like, I just think you open yourself up for a lot of scrutiny, because it's not the only key play in games that are determining games. Like, I believe, like, even the OPI where, like, you get picked on a play, but the ball's thrown on the other side or the guy sacked, they don't call that. And, like, that play comes back up in the game, and then they pick it a little bit better, and then that's a touchdown. Like, there's so many different things, and I fully get what you're saying. Like, the Patriots end up winning that game, but if they don't win that game and that's not called DPI, we look back and we're like, what? Like, when that play happened, like, what the hell are we looking at? Like, he literally tackled him before the ball got there. I just think, and I know what you're saying because legalized gambling is in play, but I've been a fan of, I think there still needs to be human error a part of the game. I think it's one of the issues that we have with replay assist, because it's now like, when does it come in? Like, hey, this looks like this should have got fixed. That didn't get fixed. So it's really hard. I think overall the whole officiating thing needs to be revamped and redone, which I've said before. I think our officials in the game of football should be full-time jobs. They should be doing that with benefits and everything. And I think, does that make it perfect? No, but I think it surely would help if your livelihood could be strictly just officiating.
I think they've squandered the, well, we have to accept some amount of human error argument the moment they started stuffing their pockets with DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, and every other potential sports book. They have, on everything else, they got one sponsor. For something like this, we got five. We have 5 exclusive sponsors, or whatever the number may be. At one point, it was actually 7. They had 7 exclusive sportsbook partners. You want to give us money? We'll take your money. That's something that I think makes it more important to either eliminate or at a minimum minimize human error. Here's my proposal based on what you said. And again, I like having this back and forth because you mentioned offensive pass interference. And, how about a play where there's a quacker floating in the air and the safety's there ready to catch it for an easy interception, and the receiver runs over and wipes him out, right? What's the penalty? It's not defense gets the ball at the spot of where the interception would have been. It's 10 yards. So let's just make DPI 10 or 15 yards and eliminate this massive 50, 60, in theory 70, 80-yard swing, depending upon how far the ball's thrown. Let's eliminate that from the game. I think that's a fair compromise. And do we run the risk of and maybe now I don't want to complicate it and say if it's blatant, we're going to make it a spot foul. We kind of know it when we see it. Maybe that's the fail-safe. I don't know. But I just think, no, I don't even want that. Let's make it 10 or 15 yards. Let's put the onus on the receiver to try to avoid the guy that's trying to blatantly tackle him. And if you get blatantly tackled, you get 10 or 15 yards and you get a first down. But if it's good enough for OPI, when a guy's going to go break up an interception, it should be good enough for DPI if a guy goes over and breaks up a catch. 10 yards, 15 yards, automatic first down. And because my goal is to protect the game, and having that ability to have a 50-yard gain or not gain and affect the outcome of the game because the official did or didn't throw the flag incorrectly, I think that's too much of a risk for the NFL. I think have we reached an agreement? Is that the fix? Are we going to advocate a change
I'm not saying no to
in the
that.
defensive pass interference penalty to 10 or 15 yards in order to eliminate the massive amount of influence that the officials have over a 50-yard play? That's my purpose for it. That's my proposal. I'll write it up and send it to Rich McKay.
I'll take a step.
I know where to find him. Dead center between
going
Arthur Blank
15
and Terry
yards.
Fontenot.
I'm going 15 yards.
I'll go 15.
Forget 10 or 15.
15's
Just
fine.
make it 15.
I'll
Long
go
live
15.
the DBs. Long live the DBs.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.